Welcome to the DPM podcast, where we go beyond theory to give expert PM advice for leading better digital projects. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Ben Aston, founder of The Digital Project Manager. Now, I wonder, have you ever felt like as much as you might want to, you simply just don't care, or maybe even feel like you can't care anymore? You're feeling strung out, you're feeling apathetic, and no matter what you do, you just really can't be asked. Perhaps you're feeling exhausted, like you've got no energy whatsoever. Your memory seems to be failing somehow. You're not sleeping well. You're getting sick. Perhaps you're feeling more alienated. You're feeling isolated and maybe just beginning to neglect yourself. You're agitated, or it might just be like you feel like your performance is just not what it normally is. You're missing deadlines. You're becoming less engaged with the projects you're working in, or you're just not able to concentrate properly. Well, having one or two of these signs here or there, well, that really is just part of normal life for all of us. And we all have bad days. But when you begin realizing that these symptoms have been going on for an extended period of time, you might be looking at burnout. And in this podcast, we're going to talk about the signs of burnout and how we can deal with it with someone who's been burned but come out from the other side. So this podcast is brought to you by Clarizen. They're the leader in enterprise project and portfolio management software. Visit clarizen.com to learn more. And today I'm joined by Lynn Winters. And Lynn is a freelance digital strategist. She works mainly with nonprofits in the open source community. She's a digital project manager, a content strategist. She does work in user experience too. So she really brings a holistic approach to her work. And this year, which we're going to talk about as well, was actually last year, Lynn launched the Managed Digital Conference, which is a conference for local DPMs in Minnesota. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But hello, Lynn.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Well, great to have you. And now first, I kind of want to understand your jam, because you're a freelance digital project manager, content strategist, UX person. So how do you position yourself, and what do you actually end up doing day in, day out?
Yeah, well, I started my career doing project management work, and I moved from the television production world into digital back in about 2008. And so I found myself really lucky at a really small agency where, because it was small, I got to try lots of different things and grow. And so after I kind of got comfortable with the project management, I started doing account management, user experience, content strategy, testing, all kinds of things. And so as I kind of moved on to other places, I had the opportunity to grow in the depths of that. And so I went freelance a couple years ago, and really have just kind of been focusing more on the content strategy and user experience. And of course, I can't let go of that PM kind of work. It comes with it all the time as I do stuff. Yeah.
So I'm interested though. I mean, you say you were kind of at a smaller agency, or an agency where you got the opportunity to wear lots of different hats. Mm-hmm. Now, how did you make sure in that process, or maybe you were doing this, but how did you try and make sure you weren't stepping on everyone's toes? Because I think as a project manager, you know, we're control freaks. We like just to sometimes get our hands dirty. But how did you do that in such a way that you didn't just piss everyone off?
Yeah, well, honestly, it became like areas that we needed to grow as a company, because as I was working there, I think our average project was like $30,000. And by the end, it was more of $250,000. Yeah. And so we had to expand our services. And it was essentially like, hey, here's this thing we need to be good at. Who's interested? Yeah. And if it's something I was interested in and somebody else was like, I don't really care so much, then I was able to go full in on that. And it just kind of like worked out with a different type of personality. So it ended up being less stepping on toes. There was another person at the agency that did user experience and did design, but she worked more at a higher level of thinking about things. And so when I wanted to get out a spreadsheet with, 20,000 pieces of content, she was completely out and I was totally in. So it was kind of a complementary thing where I could like do my work and then kind of hand it off to her at that level.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. I think it's in some of the agencies I've been in, the bigger agencies, and where these roles are much more defined, it becomes, you become typecast in a way as a PM, and you only ever get to do PMing because, hey, there's someone who does content strategy and someone else who's in charge of user experience and someone else who's the strategist, and you might have 3 different kind of strategists on a single project. And so I think it's great that you've had the opportunity to get your hands dirty and find really that you've got a passion for things that are beyond just project management, which has enabled you to do what you do now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm curious, like the kind of organizations that you're working with right now. What are the kind of projects that you're engaged with?
Yeah. So I work with, 3 to 4 different agencies, some local, I'm here in Minnesota, and some are across the country. And it just kind of depends what their needs are. So right now, I have a high volume of education. So some school district, a college website. I'm also doing some work with affordable housing, with a law firm. So it's a little bit all over the place, and kind of just depends what pops up on people's plates.
And so, in terms of like working lots with nonprofits or these more charitable organizations, do you find that your approach to managing a project in that sector is different to how you'd have managed it at all in the private sector, or what's the
Yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of found myself in nonprofits because it's just a good fit for me. Because when I worked in television, I was at a PBS station. So I started with a nonprofit and then I continued mostly working that. A couple years back, I worked at an agency that did, some commerce and for profit. And I just felt like we were talking different languages. It's just more of my niche to be able to talk about more mission and impact. And so the management is very different because with a nonprofit, typically a nonprofit has saved up for several years to make this big movement, this big project, and it means a lot different to them. They also tend to have more things on their plate. And also appreciate the opportunity to make this big change. So I find that it's a little more like maybe collaborative and we're in this together. And for profit, maybe they're more likely to be able to have more money or they make changes more often. So it's a little less precious for them. And so I think with for profits, I tend to get more strict on documentation and rules and hourly and tracking things. And with nonprofits, the feeling is a little more relaxed and they kind of trust you and lay back, and it's a little different because I tend to often not work with anyone in a marketing department, right? Or it's the marketing department of one versus in a for-profit, it could be, whole 10 people that come from a marketing department. So it's a different vibe. And then I have to kind of adjust how I handle them.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting as well, when we're dealing with clients who are marketeers, who are used to kind of dealing with agencies and projects, is very different from when you're working with a nonprofit, perhaps where this is their big project of the decade or whatever, and they've got absolutely no idea what needs to happen, and there's much more of a hand-holding exercise, which can be quite fun, is that you get a chance to educate them as you go.
Yeah, education and sharing knowledge is a big thing for me. So I appreciate being able to give that to someone and help kind of teach them how to go and do the things, after we're kind of gone and done with a project.
Yeah. And when talking about sharing knowledge, let's talk about the Managed Digital Conference, which you started last year, right? So what kind of birthed that idea?
Well, I went to a DPM summit that's put on by the Bureau of Digital way back. I can't remember how many years ago, but it was back in Austin, maybe 5 years. And it was a really big moment for me. Up until that point, the agency I worked with was really big into the Drupal community, which is also a wonderful community, but it's at that time was mostly developers. So I'd go to a conference of like 2,000-3,000 people, and all I would find is developers. And if I found that one PM, I would like hunt them down kind of creepily just to like have like a comrade and someone to share knowledge with and do things with. And so when I went to the DPM summit, it was like, oh my God, like I can find other people like me. And, we geek out on the certain things and we can share experiences. So I really appreciate that opportunity. And then over the years past that point, people would come to me all the time about like, who should I hire here? And I need mentors. And what do you do about this? And I realized there's just kind of a hole in the local community because PMs just don't have a lot of options for learning. And it's nice to see, you guys doing stuff and other people kind of growing, but it's been pretty dry for a long time. And so I really wanted to do something locally. And when I changed jobs and became freelance, I was like, well, I finally have time. And of course, that lasted for a hot second. But by then I had momentum and I started going. And, just through word of mouth, we put on a conference last year that had 140 people show up. So Awesome. It was pretty exciting.
Cool. And tell us what's in store for the conference in the year ahead, because the conference is, it's not that far out now, right?
No, it's not. It's up in May 9th. It's similar to last year, but a slightly different format. So the big focus for the conference is networking first, learning second. And the reason for that is I want to build the network of PMs locally to support the job searching, to support mentorship. And so we're going to have a couple more opportunities to network. So we're going to do table discussions where we're going to have topics and people are going to be sharing because some of the feedback I heard last year was that while breakout sessions in keynotes are really good, there's also a lot of knowledge in the room. And that's so true. So people are going to have that time to connect and network and learn from each other. And then we moved up the happy hour a little earlier so that people, don't go home and take pick up their kids from school. They have time to connect with people. So there's going to be just a little more opportunity and free space to do that meeting and greeting situations.
Cool. So if people want to find out more about the conference, where should they go?
Yeah, they should go to managedigital.io.
Cool.
And tickets are going pretty fast. So if you're interested, you should register now and get on board.
Yeah, and it's just a one-day conference, right?
Correct.
In Minnesota.
In Minneapolis. Yep.
Sorry, in Minneapolis, yeah.
Yeah.
My American geography.
I know. There's a big state. There's some lakes in it.
Is that a city? Is that a state? What is that thing?
It's the Twin Cities. Come on.
Yeah, sorry.
There's an airport close to it, And, we keep it's part of the deal too is to keep it affordable because it's hard to kind of build up the money and go to a big conference. So it's, we're past the early bird pricing, but right now the ticket price is $175. So it's totally manageable for a one-day conference.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good stuff. Well, let's move on to talk about your post and burnout.
Yeah.
And we're kind of making the assumption that people know what burnout is. And I kind of introduced the kind of symptoms of burnout at the beginning. But what is burnout? Tell us what it is.
Yeah, it's basically an exhaustion of both your physical and emotional strength. So you've hit some walls in both those aspects. So it might not just be physical changes, but it might just be a mental exhaustion. So you're basically burned out, stressed out, and frustrated.
And obviously the causes of it can be a variety of things, but in your experience or from the experience of talking to others about it, what have been the kind of primary drivers of getting to that place?
Yeah. And I think it's really threefold, and it's really based on the way the world has changed our workplace and ourselves. So the world in general, the work world has changed, right? People aren't just coming home at 4 or 5 o'clock, shutting down, and that's it for the day. And they'll deal with whatever problem comes the next day. We've got iPads and watches and phones and Slack channels and any old way to get a hold of anyone at any time of day.
Yeah.
And we've changed that. I think at first it was this great convenience and helpfulness, and it's become more of a detriment to how we do things. And in our industry, it has even worse reputation of having these sort of problems. And I'm sure Silicon Valley is causing a lot of that. But essentially, this digital industry is really hard on drawing a line between work and personal time.
Yeah.
The other, before we blame ourselves, right? The other area of concern is the workplace. And I think that really comes down to, as far as for project managers, how much a workplace values the role of project management,
right?
How they see it and support it. And we were talking previously about how people often aren't even called project managers. That's maybe a dirty title or not the right thing. I've been at so many places where we don't even display how many hours and the cost of a project manager because we think people, they wouldn't want to see it and they don't want to pay for it. Why wouldn't they want to pay for it? So if you're in a workplace that doesn't support the value of who you are, give you opportunities, and make sure that you're not given too much work, if you're not in that kind of place, that can cause a lot of the problems.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the final thing is ourselves, right? Which is a lot of my problem personally, because I've been in some good workplaces and some backward places, but I myself have always just been the yes person. I can take it on. I can do that. I can help the team and just taking on more and more things and just putting bad habits into place. I also have found people that when they either switch into the PM industry later on, or are new to the industry, or maybe older in the industry, right? Like we're not 20 and they're more 40 or 50. There's a lack of confidence. And so there's this kind of like hustle that we think we should be doing to catch up or get to where we need to go. And that maybe is a perception that we might have that we don't actually need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's a balance, right? Because I think that kind of feeling of like you need to hustle, there is a reality to that when you're in a new role, or, you're trying to make an impression. But it's when you push that too far and then you start becoming burnt out. But I mean, what's your story of getting burnt out, and how did you, like, of the kind of three things that you've identified there, what was the kind of primary driver, do you think, and at what point did you realize, hey, there's a problem here?
Yeah, well, I think probably when I was born, but I got the extra majors in college. I've had two kind of jobs since I've graduated college. I have a secret life where I shoot sports for either television or in-house video. And so I've kind of always maintained multiple jobs for a long time. So really when it comes down to, for me, is there's first, and I think when it comes down to all of us, we should first look at ourselves, because if we're doing what we should be doing, then we can look at our employer and our environment. But we can't look at other people and point at other people for our problems until we took a hard look at ourselves. And honestly, I've been putting pressure on my family and my work life, and, just trying to be like, oh, it'll be easier in 4 months or in 6 months. And that's really no way to live your life. But, a couple years back, I was in a position where I, along with a couple of my employees, got laid off from my job, kind of out of the blue. And it was like, okay, what do I want to do? And so I started getting phone calls of like, hey, I heard you lost your job. We have this position. Do you want to do it? And something inside me kept saying like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I don't want to do that. And I realized if there was ever a time, this was the time to kind of address my work-life balance, my choices, my goals, where I wanted to be. And so I took the time to slowly get back into what I wanted to do, and made a couple other, personal changes around eating and exercise and like just being happier to make a change for myself.
That's cool. Yeah, I think my experience of this is I found myself in a role, and I think throughout my entire career I found that I was always pushing, I was very ambitious, and trying to get to a place where for me the objective was, okay, well, I wanted to be a VP, and the way that I did that was work extremely hard, and I was on planes all the time, traveling all over the States and over Canada. I was traveling every week, and at the end of it, I was just exhausted. Like I think the final straw for me wasn't actually the work, but it was at the point where I had my second child, and that at that point with the even less sleep, that's kind of what broke me. And then what happened was, it wasn't just psychological, but maybe it is psychological in a way, but I got arthritis, and it's something I still have, but it just came from from exhaustion, essentially, from just having worked too hard for too long. And these things, it can be driven through that ambition, or it can just be this kind of striving to just keep your head above water, where you feel like, I just want to impress. But the impact at the end is just really not worth it, right?
Yeah, and I had a similar, like a physical issue too, where I had information about some things that were happening at the company, and I started having like fake heart attacks. I was having, in the middle of the night, my chest was hurting so bad. I would wake up like in so much pain that I literally went to go check to see if I was having going to have a heart attack. And I was just having panic attacks in the middle of the night, just It's like, okay, and I'd love to say that I was like, so smart to look at these things and all the other, signs beforehand. And I made the change myself, but I didn't. And, I hear after I talked about this topic of the DPM Summit, I had so many people come up to me and tell me their story. And I was just like, I feel bad, but it's like, okay, well, let's take control of this. Like, what can you do about it?
Yeah.
'Cause life is short, and, it can happen. What also happened in the last couple of years to make some changes for me is that a neighbor of ours, husband passed away from a heart attack at 40. And one of my clients got breast cancer. And so it's very real. Like, time is limited. And how happy do we want to be with what we're doing and the choices we make?
Yeah. And in terms of dealing with it, I think one of the things that you talk about in your post is starting small and picking one item to focus on in the first month. But even that can feel overwhelming. So to give us a head start, what did you do that worked? What was your small thing that began to help, create some momentum for change?
Yeah, I think the first thing I did, just because things like when you lose your job, things can be emotional and a little out of control and you're not sure what's going on and what you should be doing next. I just started by exercising and eating better. So the last year I had gained 20 pounds from just like sitting at my computer all day and all night, not taking care of myself. And so I started by doing this like disgusting green shake diet. Which I still drink every morning, less disgusting now because I've changed it up a bit. But my sister had been doing this like smoothie diet thing to cleanse. And so I did that, which led me to stop eating wheat, which has been really good, and having a gluten-free diet. And then I, as I was trolling Facebook, as I had more time, I purchased this exercise thing off of Facebook, as one does. And then new age. And I just started doing it. It was like a 20-minute a day, 3 times a week exercise thing. And it made a huge difference. So I started feeling better, and it kind of cleared my mind of like, okay, so I can feel better. I'm not as stressed out. What do I want to do now? And I just started working on the physical part of me first.
Yeah. And you bought a unicorn.
And I bought a unicorn, and I love that. Well, I mean, we don't have it anymore.
Oh, I'm going to ask you, how is the unicorn? If you haven't had a look, take a look at the post. If you want to be inspired of what to buy, just, I don't know, what to buy, check out the unicorn.
And I think everyone should. Everyone should do like say, fuck it, I'm going to buy this most ridiculous thing. This year I'm thinking about buying an inflatable like unicorn costume and trying to water ski on it. I haven't gone that far yet, but I think I'm going to do it. But this thing was like 16 feet tall, like 12 feet wide.
How long did it take to pump up?
Well, I didn't do it, but my husband said it took like 4 hours and 6 beers. But it was well worth it until a lovely fisherman took the head out with his hook.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, sad.
So we had a deflated head for part of the summer, and then it was just like, because we had it sitting in the water all summer, so it got a little green and stuff. So we put that away, but we did buy one of those hot dog like ridiculous things that you like would go on in Mexico, on a spring break kind of thing. We bought one of those for this summer, so because I had to like. I've decided like every year we're going to buy something ridiculous and fun for, our brief summer that we have in Minnesota.
Sounds like a good plan. But let's talk about how we stop burnout happening in the first place. Because I think once you've hit burnout, I mean, one thing is recovering from it and, trying to set new boundaries and, trying to pivot. But obviously what's better is if we stop it happening in the first place. And in your post, you talk about 3 things we can do, which is gaining control over your time, creating work and home boundaries, and investing in yourself. And we've kind of talked about a couple of those in what you did to recover. But in terms of gaining control over your time, I think within the workplace, in terms of actionable things that people can do, can you tell us what you found to be most effective in gaining control over your time, so that you're focused on the right things and not ending up working late, working all hours? What's worked for you?
Yeah, I think the first biggest change I made is stop scheduling everything around everyone else and imagining that you're invisible and that you can just make it work. I did this forever. I see everyone doing this, is that, well, I want the project to be on time, on budget, and respond to the client. So I'm going to squeeze this meeting in anywhere it can fit, where it works for my team, and then I'll just make it work. And so what happens is you end up piling too much stuff on. The workday doesn't start till 4 or 5 o'clock when you can actually sit down. Everybody leaves you alone, and now you can work. And so I just stopped doing that. Like, what's the difference if a project gets done a week or two earlier? Like, it doesn't matter, because what we do know is the client will probably delay it anyway, based on content or some other decision. And so it doesn't matter. So it needs to be spread out as needed. I tell clients all the time that I can tell you around when major things are going to happen for the latter part of the project, but I'm not going to give you exact dates till we get into it, because either you're going to change the timeline or I'm going to need to for good project reasons. So making sure, like, I'm going on vacation myself on Wednesday. It's like, oh, how many things can I squeeze in? I'm like, forget it. Can this meeting happen without me when I'm gone? Great. That one will go when I'm gone. That one will go in a week when I get back, and no worries off my back. The other thing is scheduling and work time. So I have, no matter what kind of calendaring system you use or not, I like to block out, like, here's what I'm going to do during those 2 hours. And I'm going to only do that. And if I have a problem with people bugging me, I work mostly from home now, so I'll just silence my Slack channels, and I won't get pinged from 4 different Slack channels I have right now to bug me. But if you're in an office, you could actually literally put up a do not disturb sign, as long as that's only happening a couple times a week, and you tell your team, here's what I'm doing. I have terrible boundaries with my time. I'm not getting anything done. It's stressing me out. I want to try this technique. It doesn't mean that I don't care about you, but I'm going to set it up at these times, and I'm going to put a sign up. So as a reminder for you guys, if you could respect that and try that, let me know. And in a couple weeks after I've tried it, I'm going to check in with you to see if it's causing a problem for how we get work done, or if it's working out okay.
Yeah. And another thing you can do, if that's not working, if the do not disturb sign doesn't work, leave the office, like take your laptop and go to a coffee shop, so that you are not available. But I think, what I found was that I'd always use, lunch breaks as a time to, that's kind of like the first opportunity in a day when there's no one will accept the meeting.
No one bugging you.
Yeah. So
until they find out you're in your office every day at lunchtime.
Yeah. So, but I think, and you talk about this, is, make sure that you're taking breaks. And I love what you're saying about, don't schedule everything around everyone else, because invariably that will mean that, you're screwed over. Like, it'll mean you're coming in early, it'll mean you're leaving late, not taking any breaks throughout the day, and it's going to burn you out. So I think gaining control over your time is really important.
The other thing I've done more recently is really block meetings into like 1 day or 2 days. And I do that a lot because then, I'm this mysterious place called Minneapolis for you. It's a good 40-minute drive, right, between traffic in the morning. And so what I try to do is I line up all my meetings in 1 or 2 days a week, and then I don't have to travel. So that means I have another hour and a half. But I think if you are in an office, if you can kind of be like, oh, this is the day that I'm not going to get anything done. I'm going to go in and out of meetings, but then tomorrow I have nothing. I think it makes a really big difference too.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of, you've, told the story of how you, realized you were burnt out, and you've made some changes and now have adopted a different way of working. But what are the kind of challenges, or where do you see it kind of being problematic and you slipping back into old habits? What are the kind of things to watch out for people who are who are in danger of kind of backsliding or slipping into the first place? What are like the key indicators for you?
To me, and I'm kind of in a slippage mode right now because I'm working on the conference. Right. So it's an extra thing that I've chosen to do. But to me is when you start having your computer open at night, like if you've decided I'm going to do it once a week, and that's fine, is if it becomes 3 days a week, is it happening multiple weeks in a row? That's kind of a big sign for me. Also, like exhausted. Like if you have gotten yourself into a plan to either go to the gym or take walks or something, if they're not happening, what's going on with that? So some signs around that, and just, like if you have a family at home, if you're starting to get a little crankier and having less patience, it probably has a lot to do with your job. It's not probably because your kid all of a sudden became like, in an evil place because they grew into a new phase. It's most likely because you just don't have the energy and time to do it. So, I mean, in general, for me, the winter's very hard because I shoot most of my sports in the winter and then with the Managed Digital Conference. And so I'm kind of taking a little different approach of like, because I like to have the flexibility where I can leave in the middle of the day and pick my kid up or do something. I'm starting to approach it as the Marie Kondo kind of situation, if you know who that is.
Yeah.
And, from tidying up and really thinking like, if I take on something extra and that is going to break my boundary of balance, is it going to bring me a lot of joy? And it's not just like, is it going to move me up a level, but is it actually going to bring me joy? And so I kind of think about it that way now. Yeah. When I do something, I'm like, yeah, but that really that makes me happy. Yeah. I'm going to choose to do that. And what it does then is when I have a lot of work on my plate, then I say, you know what though, I chose this and I'm happy about it. And I put a different attitude on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important. And I think, as we think about, I think it's often kind of, in the early parts of our career, we're kind of thinking about, climbing the ladder, being ambitious and, making our mark on the world or, doing something impressive. But I think, what I kind of realize now for me is that actually, what you're talking about is thinking about the things that actually matter in life. And, realistically, whether or not a client's project is delivered 2 weeks or a month late, and the difference that you kind of slaving day and night to help them achieve that versus taking a more balanced approach and being realistic with the clients and everyone right from the start, and not just saying what people want to hear, but actually being realistic with the project planning and say, hey, actually, I can't give you a date for the delivery because things aren't defined yet, or actually, do you know what, this being realistic about this project is going to take 6 weeks longer than you want it to. But then the result of that is, yes, you have a difficult conversation at the start and people get upset. But then, the next 3 months of your life aren't a constant struggle and you're not going to burn out as you try and deliver this undeliverable project with an unrealistic deadline. And I think so much of the time, we can be people pleasers and we want to look good. We want to achieve lots and we want to say, hey, I delivered this exactly when the client wanted. But actually, if we can slow down and have that difficult conversation at the start, buy ourselves some time, actually we might be a lot happier at the end of it and we might have more joy in our life.
Yeah. And I think also too, as far as other signs, like if you've really taken a hard look at yourself, because, being at the DPM Summit and hearing people kind of complain about where they work and stuff, I think there is just kind of a mode we get into. But if you've taken a really hard look at what you've done and you make a really good run at this and finding the right things for yourself, and you're still hitting walls where you work, then you're just not working in the right culture or the right place. I mean, I worked at a place once where I was like, I've got too much on my plate. I'm going to be on vacation over Christmas and I won't be able to deliver this report until I get back after Christmas, which was due while I took my Christmas vacation. And they said, I understand that you're overworked, but you need to get it done. Yeah. Figure it out. And so if that's the response you're getting over and over, then you need to look for a place that better matches what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Sound advice. There are plenty of jobs out there with some really good agencies. And I should say, if you are looking for a job and you haven't joined our Slack team yet, go to the digitalprojectmanager.com/Slack. We've got a channel for jobs and you can find all kinds of jobs, some remote jobs and lots of jobs with some great agencies. So if you are suffering, consider your options.
Reach out. Yeah.
But Lynn, it's been great having you today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say thank you also for being a sponsor for Managed Digital. I mean, it's a huge deal and, we can't put on a conference without people like you guys supporting our community. So we really appreciate it.
Pleasure. So I wonder what you think. I wonder if you're suffering from burnout. I wonder if you've got any great burnout tips. Well, tell us what you think. Comment on the post and also head to digitalprojectmanager.com/Slack. As I said, and join our Slack team and you'll find all kinds of conversations going on up there about all things digital PM and you can find some jobs. And if you like what you heard today, please subscribe and take a couple of minutes to leave an honest review for the DPM podcast on Apple Podcasts. They are extremely helpful for us, and they will help us tailor the show. So it's greatly appreciated. But until next time, thanks for listening.